We've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth, currently racing through our solar system.
There are cosmic events, and then there are events that change the rules. 3I Atlas was the latter. This interstellar visitor didn't just fly by, it performed. It put on a show of impossible physics that left scientists scrambling for answers.
The biggest question is whether the reflection of sunlight is coming from a solid surface, in which case, as you pointed out, or maybe a dense cloud of dust.
The story we were given was one of natural decay, a simple explanation for a complex event. But the evidence that has since leaked out tells a different tale. A story of anomalies so glaring that they point to a deliberate attempt to hide the truth about what really entered our solar system. A comet unlike any other. When a traveler from another star system pays a visit to our cosmic neighborhood, it's a global event. You see, these objects are messengers carrying secrets of distant worlds frozen in time and space. So when the Atlas telescope in Hawaii first spotted a faint smudge designated 3I Atlas in December of 2019, the astronomical community was electric with excitement. This was only the second interstellar object ever detected, a rare chance to peek into the building blocks of another solar system. It was hailed as the comet of the century. But as the world's most powerful telescopes focused on this visitor, the excitement slowly began to curdle into a deep, unsettling confusion. The thing nobody tells you is that in space, when things don't add up, it's either the dawn of a new discovery or a sign of something profoundly wrong. For 3I Atlas, the anomalies started piling up so fast that the official story began to feel less like a scientific report and more like a carefully managed narrative. One designed to calm nerves and direct attention away from a truth that was becoming too obvious to hide. The first clue that something was amiss was the comet's spectacular, almost impossible brightening. Comets are essentially dirty snowballs. As they get closer to the sun, the ice on their surface turns directly into gas, releasing dust and creating the glowing halo or coma that makes them visible. They get brighter as they get warmer. That's the rule. 3I Atlas followed this rule, but it did so with an alarming intensity. Through February and March of 2020, it brightened by a factor of thousands, far more rapidly than any known comet at that distance. To put it mildly, it was shining with the energy of a celestial object much closer to the sun. It was as if someone had flipped a switch. Astronomers scrambled for explanations. Perhaps it had an unusually large nucleus, or maybe it was made of exotic ices that vaporized at much colder temperatures. These were plausible theories, but they felt like patches on a growing hole in our understanding. What many overlooked was that this intense brightening was a huge energy release. And it was happening when the comet was still more than 90 million miles from the sun, roughly the same distance as Earth. At that range, the sun's rays are simply not strong enough to trigger such a dramatic outburst. The numbers just didn't make sense. It was the first major anomaly, a piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. And it was just the beginning. The real shock came in early April. Just as 3I Atlas was predicted to become visible to the naked eye, it did the exact opposite. It started to fade. The comet of the century was dying before the show even began. Our most powerful space telescopes were immediately tasked with getting a closer look, and what they saw sent a shockwave through the scientific community. The comet wasn't just fading, it was disintegrating. Now, comets can and do break apart. They are fragile things. But the way 3I Atlas came apart was different. It wasn't a messy, chaotic explosion. Instead, the nucleus cleanly fractured into 2, then 3, then 4 distinct, solid pieces. Over the next few weeks, observers confirmed as many as 30 separate fragments, all moving in a coordinated, almost lazy procession along the same path. This was the second and most glaring anomaly. A normal comet might shatter under the sun's tidal forces, but that usually happens much closer to the sun, where the gravitational pull is immense. 3I Atlas was still over 60 million miles away. What could have caused such a clean, multi-stage breakup? The official statements from space agencies were quick and reassuring. This was a natural phenomenon, a sign of a structurally weak comet. But many people are crazy about these events, and independent analysts pointed out the obvious contradictions. If the comet was so weak and fragile, how could it have produced such a massive energetic outburst just weeks before? A fragile object doesn't suddenly flare up with thousands of times its normal brightness. The two events, the impossible brightening and the premature, neat fragmentation, seem to be in direct opposition, and this contradiction is where the whispers of a cover-up truly began. NASA, it seemed, was picking the explanation that was most convenient, not the one that fit all the facts. The anomalies were becoming too obvious to explain away with simple theories. The object that came from another star was not what it seemed. Not a comet, not an asteroid. The bizarre behavior of 3I Atlas didn't happen in a vacuum. To understand why its anomalies were taken so seriously, you have to look back just 3 years earlier to the arrival of our first confirmed interstellar visitor, an object named Oumuamua. You see, Oumuamua was the event that primed humanity for the possibility of interstellar weirdness. When it was detected in 2017, it immediately shattered all our expectations. For starters, it had no coma, no tail of gas and dust. That meant it wasn't a comet. But it also had a very strange shape, estimated to be extremely elongated, hundreds of feet long but perhaps only tens of feet thick. No natural asteroid we had ever seen looked like that. It was the first object of its kind, and it was a complete and utter riddle. But the real mystery of Oumuamua wasn't its shape, it was its movement. As it flew away from the sun, it accelerated. It was a slight push, but it was undeniable, and it couldn't be explained by the sun's gravity alone. The outgassing of ice acts like tiny rocket thrusters, giving the comet that extra push. But again, Oumuamua had no visible outgassing. Not a speck of dust or a wisp of gas was detected. So what was pushing it? Scientists offered a range of exotic explanations, from a new type of hydrogen iceberg outgassing invisible molecules to the idea that it was an incredibly fluffy object being pushed by solar radiation. What many overlooked, however, was the simplest explanation, put forth by Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb. The object was being pushed because it was designed to be pushed. He proposed that Oumuamua might be a piece of alien technology, specifically a solar sail, a thin, light craft designed to be propelled by starlight. This theory was, to put it mildly, controversial. The scientific establishment pushed back hard, insisting on a natural explanation, but the idea stuck. The ghost of Oumuamua, the possibility of a technological artifact masquerading as a space rock, was now imprinted on our collective consciousness. Then, 3I Atlas arrived, and while Oumuamua was strange for its lack of cometary activity, 3I Atlas was strange for its bizarre cometary activity. It was as if the universe sent us two completely different puzzles back to back. One was a rock that moved like a comet, and the other was a comet that behaved like nothing we'd ever seen. The most shocking fact is that the arrival of these two profoundly anomalous objects in just a few years defied all statistical odds. We had been scanning the skies for centuries without a single confirmed interstellar visitor, and then two show up, both of them breaking all the rules in their own unique ways. It was a cosmic coincidence of epic proportions, or it wasn't a coincidence at all. This context is crucial. When NASA and other institutions tried to downplay the strange fragmentation of 3I Atlas, they weren't just dealing with one weird comet, they were dealing with the second inexplicable interstellar event in a row. The public and a growing number of scientists were no longer willing to accept easy answers. The pattern of strangeness was becoming too obvious. First, an object that looked like technology but was called an asteroid. Now, an object that acted like a deploying fleet but was called a comet. Either our understanding of the universe was fundamentally wrong, or these visitors weren't what they appeared to be. The official story of 3I Atlas being a fragile comet seemed all the more suspicious in the shadow of Oumuamua's unresolved mysteries. These weren't just rocks, they were question marks, sent from the stars. The power of information. The moment the potential importance of 3I Atlas was understood, a silent planetary lockdown on information began. The thing nobody tells you is that there are protocols for this. Shadowy plans agreed upon decades ago for what to do in the event of something truly paradigm-shifting from space. And the first step is always the same: control the information. You see, the initial flood of observations from telescopes around the world was open and collaborative. But as the anomalies became more pronounced, that flow of data began to slow to a trickle. Suddenly, requests for new high-resolution data were being politely but firmly denied. Telescope time was being mysteriously retasked to urgent calibration tests or unexpected solar flare monitoring. It was a coordinated global effort to point the world's eyes away from this mysterious visitor. What many overlooked is that this wasn't just a scientific decision, it was a geopolitical one. The discovery of something truly anomalous in space isn't like finding a new planet. It's a revelation that could shatter religions, economies, and our entire sense of place in the universe. The power to control that information is, for a time, the greatest power on Earth. Many people are crazy about the idea of a new space race, but this would be a silent one, fought not with rockets, but with data. The nation that could first understand the true nature of 3I Atlas would have an unimaginable advantage, especially if its strange behavior hinted at advanced physics or technology. The public reason for the silence is always the fear of global panic. But the real reason is likely a new, silent Cold War, a race to understand what is truly out there before anyone else. The most shocking fact is how effective this kind of information management can be. The story of 3I Atlas's bizarre breakup was initially a major news item, but it was quickly relegated to the fringes of the internet, dismissed by official sources as interesting but ultimately natural. It became another story for conspiracy forums. But for people watching this, wondering if something this big could really be kept a secret, the thing is, it's easier than you think. All it takes is a few official-sounding statements from trusted scientific bodies, using complex jargon to dismiss anomalies as not fully understood, but likely natural phenomena. Scientists who know the truth are often bound by national security oaths or simply fear for their careers if they speak out against the consensus. The mystery of 3I Atlas thus becomes a ghost. A what-if story told in hushed tones, while the real work of analyzing the most sensitive data continues in secret. Are we being protected from a truth we can't handle, or are we being denied our own future? To put it mildly, the line is blurry. And you can see this everywhere in history when groundbreaking discoveries are made. From the early days of nuclear energy to the development of stealth technology, the first instinct of governments is to classify, control, and contain. The behavior of 3I Atlas, especially its clean fragmentation into multiple coherent objects, could easily be interpreted not as a breakup, but as a deployment. If that were the case, no government on Earth would want that information to be public until they understood the intent behind it. The silence wasn't necessarily about hiding aliens, it was about hiding ignorance and fear in the face of a potential threat or an opportunity of unparalleled significance. The anomalies were simply too obvious, and the stakes were too high to leave the narrative to chance. The silence itself was the biggest clue that something was wrong. So, for people watching this, wondering if a fleet of alien probes is now silently exploring our solar system, the time has come to pull back the curtain and look at what the official scientific consensus says. The thing is, when you strip away the layers of speculation, you are left with a series of real, but perhaps not as sinister, scientific events. First, the intense brightening. The most popular explanation among mainstream astronomers is that 3I Atlas was a dynamical newcomer. This means it was likely its very first trip into the inner solar system, having spent millions of years falling from the Oort cloud, a vast icy shell surrounding our sun. These virgin comets are often covered in extremely volatile ices like frozen carbon monoxide, which vaporize explosively when they first feel the sun's warmth. This would explain the rapid, unusual brightening. It was a one-time explosive outgassing event from a pristine surface. Was 3I Atlas just a dying comet, or was its breakup a deliberate act? Are we looking too hard for patterns or not hard enough? The truth is still out there. Remember to like and subscribe for more cosmic mysteries.